The wedding, a story about being seen. Sarah had ironed the navy dress twice. It wasn't a special dress. She'd bought it 3 years ago for her office Christmas party. Back when she still had an office. Back when life had a different shape entirely. But it was the only formal thing she owned that still fit, so she'd steamed out every wrinkle with the kind of careful attention she usually reserved for Mia's school projects. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror at 5:47 p.m., she wondered if any of it mattered. Her daughter appeared in the doorway, 7 years old and barefoot, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. "You look pretty, Mama." Sarah turned around.
"Yeah? Like a princess." Mia said it with complete sincerity, the way only children can. Sarah crouched down and kissed her forehead. "Mrs. Patterson is coming at 6. You be good for her, okay? I'll be home before you wake up. Promise? Promise."
She grabbed her keys before she could change her mind. The drive was 2 hours on a highway that cut through flat countryside and small towns with gas stations and not much else. Sarah kept the radio on, some pop station she didn't know, because silence gave her too much room to think. She thought anyway. She thought about how her cousin Priya had called 3 times before she finally said yes.
"Please, Sarah, I need family there. His side is enormous and mine is just, please."
She thought about how she'd arranged the babysitter, cleared her Saturday, told herself it would be good for her. Get out of the house, be around people, stop hiding. She thought about the last wedding she'd attended, 4 years ago, when she had arrived with a husband and left with a husband, and the whole thing had been so ordinary she'd almost taken it for granted. Ordinary felt like a foreign country now. The venue was the kind of place that required valet parking and made you feel underdressed before you'd even walk through the door. White columns, a fountain, chandeliers visible through the tall windows even from the parking lot, throwing warm gold light onto the manicured lawn. Sarah handed her keys to a young man in a red vest and walked inside. The ballroom took her breath away, and not entirely in a good way. White orchids cascaded from towering centerpieces. Crystal glasses caught the light from a dozen chandeliers. Round tables draped in ivory linen stretched across the room, each one occupied by people who seemed to already know each other, already laughing, already belonging. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers and something catered and warm. She found her seat from the placement card, table 9, near the back. She sat down. The couple to her left were deep in a conversation about property prices in a neighborhood she'd never heard of. The man across from her was on his phone, thumb scrolling. The 2 women beside him were discussing someone named Claudia with the focused intensity of a legal deposition. No one looked up. Sarah unfolded her napkin slowly, set it in her lap, reached for her water glass, looked around the room as though she were searching for someone she knew, which was a thing people did when they felt alone and didn't want it to show. She was very good at it by now. 30 minutes passed. The starters arrived. Something elegant with microgreens that Sarah ate carefully. Not because she was particularly hungry, but because it gave her something to do. Around her, the table gradually animated as wine was poured and toasts were mentioned and people loosened in the way that formal events eventually permit. Still, no one spoke to her. She caught a glimpse of Priya across the room in her wedding dress, radiant and overwhelmed, moving from table to table like a small, glowing satellite. Their eyes met for just a second. Priya mouthed, "Thank you," with enormous feeling, and then someone pulled her away and she was gone. "I came for her," Sarah reminded herself. "That's enough. That's the reason." But the truth was sitting heavily on her chest. Since the divorce, finalized 14 months ago after 2 years of a slow and painful unraveling, every social situation had felt like this. Like arriving at a party where everyone had received a manual she hadn't. How to walk into a room alone and not feel like an apology. How to sit at a table full of couples and not feel the absence of someone beside you like a phantom limb. She had been good at people once. She used to be the one who talked to strangers, who remembered names, who made the shy person at the party feel welcome. Somewhere in the wreckage of the last few years, she had lost the thread back to that version of herself. She thought about Mia, probably watching cartoons right now, curled into the corner of the couch with her rabbit. She'd asked that morning if mommies had to go to weddings alone, and Sarah had said sometimes yes, and that's okay. She hoped it was true. "You look like someone who'd rather be anywhere else." The voice came from her right. She turned. A man was standing beside the empty chair next to her, not sitting, just standing. with one hand resting on the back of the chair as though asking permission. He was somewhere in his mid-40s, she guessed. Dark suit, jacket well cut, white shirt open at the collar without a tie. Dark hair going silver at the temples. A short beard, neat but not precious about it. He wasn't looking at her with pity. That was the first thing she noticed. It wasn't the look people gave her sometimes when they learned she was a single mother. That mixture of sympathy and subtle relief that it wasn't them. It was something else, something more level. Like he recognized something. "Is it that obvious?" she said. He glanced around the table, at the conversations happening without her, and back at her. "Only because I feel the same way." He nodded at the empty chair. "May I?" "Of course." He sat, extended his hand. "James." "Sarah." "So." He leaned back slightly. He leaned back slightly, easy in his posture the way some people are. People who've long stopped needing rooms to like them. "Which side are you on, bride or groom?" Acquaintance of the father. A wry half-smile. "Which means I know exactly no one here who wants to talk to me without wanting something from me." It surprised a laugh out of her. Genuine, quick, the kind that arrives before you've decided to allow it. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." He looked at her directly, and there was something disarming about the straightforwardness of it. No performance, no angle she could detect. "How about this? For the next hour, pretend you're with me. We'll talk like actual human beings. No networking, no positioning, no comparing portfolios." He tilted his head slightly. "Just conversation." Sarah looked at him for a moment. She thought about the drive home. The empty passenger seat. The radio she'd keep on too loud. She thought, what exactly do I have to lose? "Deal," she said. And just like that, the evening changed shape. He asked how she knew Priya, and she told him, childhood summers, the cousin who had taught her to ride a bike, who had cried at every sad movie they'd ever watched together and was completely unembarrassed about it. He asked if she had children, the question that usually made her brace for the follow-up. "And your husband?" But he just listened when she talked about Mia, asked how old, asked what she was like. "She's fierce," Sarah said, and felt the smile break through before she'd finished the sentence. "She has opinions about everything. Last week she informed me that dinosaurs would have been better than dogs because they could protect the house more effectively." James laughed, not a polite laugh, a real one. "She's not wrong," he said. He told her about growing up in a small town in the north, about a dog named Biscuit who had once eaten an entire Thanksgiving turkey directly off the kitchen counter while the family was saying grace. About his mother chasing the dog around the yard, and his father laughing so hard he'd had to sit down on the porch steps. "Did you get in trouble?" Sarah asked. "We got McDonald's for Thanksgiving dinner that year." He smiled at the memory, and in the smile she saw a younger version of him. A boy at a table full of laughter and the smell of fast food on a holiday. "Best Thanksgiving we ever had, honestly." She told him about the time Mia had attempted to cut her own hair the night before school photos, using safety scissors from her art kit. About the call from the school photographer, about the 4 months of growing it back out. "Did you frame the photo?" he asked. "It's on the refrigerator," she admitted, and he laughed again. And something in her chest unknotted just slightly. Around them, the wedding continued. Speeches and the clinking of glasses, and the first dance beginning somewhere on the other side of the room. But at table 9, in their small, quiet corner of the evening, a different thing was happening. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd talked to someone like this, without the careful maintenance of it, without monitoring herself, without the low hum of performance that had crept into all her social interactions since everything fell apart, the constant slight effort of seeming fine. With James, she just talked, and he just listened, and then listened more. It seemed like such a simple thing, she'd almost forgotten how rare it was. At 11:15, she looked at her watch, and the evening snapped back into focus. "I have to go," she said, reaching for her purse. "Babysitter." He nodded immediately, no pressure in it. Of course, he stood when she did, an old-fashioned instinct, the kind her own father had. and she found it quietly touching in a way she hadn't expected. "It was really lovely to meet you, James." "You too, Sarah." He paused. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite name. Not hesitation exactly. Something more considered. "For what it's worth," he said, "you weren't invisible tonight. You just hadn't found the right person to sit with yet." Her throat tightened. She smiled instead of trusting her voice. She walked out through the lobby, past the orchids and the chandeliers and the valet who brought her car around, and she sat for a moment behind the wheel before starting the engine. The parking lot was quiet. Through the tall windows she could see the wedding still glowing. The dancing, the laughter, the whole luminous machinery of celebration. She thought about what he'd said. You just hadn't found the right person to sit with yet. It was such a small thing to say, and it had gone all the way through her. She drove home through empty roads with the windows down, warm night air moving through the car, the radio off this time. She didn't need it. She didn't know if she'd see James again. She hadn't asked for a number and he hadn't offered one, and maybe that was right. Maybe some people are meant to arrive exactly when they're needed, say exactly what needs to be said, and then exist in your life as a fixed point rather than a continuing chapter. A reminder, not a beginning. Or maybe it was a beginning, she didn't know yet. She was learning, slowly and with great difficulty, to be comfortable not knowing. She got home at 11:58. Mrs. Patterson was knitting on the couch, the television murmuring softly. She gathered her things with the efficiency of a woman who'd done this 1,000 times and whispered that Mia had gone down easily, no trouble at all. Sarah thanked her and locked the door behind her and stood for a moment in the quiet hallway. She walked to Mia's room. Her daughter was asleep on her side, dark hair spread across the pillow, breathing the deep unconscious breath of children who have no reason not to trust the night. The stuffed rabbit had fallen to the floor sometime in the last few hours. Sarah picked it up, tucked it back gently under Mia's arm. She stood there in the doorway for a long moment, not moving, not thinking about anything in particular, just standing, smiling in the dark. She didn't frame the evening the way she might have once, as a story about a man, about romance, about rescue. She framed it the way it actually was. A night she had almost stayed home, a room she had almost disappeared inside, and one person who had looked over, pulled up a chair, and decided she was worth the conversation. She had needed to remember that. Now she did,